Hello, and welcome to the Helen Feline Ladd Concert Hall. Welcome to my home. I'm here so many hours of the day. I was here at 8 o'clock this morning. I'll be home late tonight. Welcome to my home. I probably have the most wonkiest talk tonight, but I hope you'll bear with me tonight. I want to talk about education, and I want to talk about where it's going in the future, because the whole nature of these talks is this nature of the visions of the future. So the first question I want to know is this the end of education as we know it? One of the things that's been going on is there's been lots of conversation going on about challenges for the educational systems and methods that we have. There are lots of folks who talk about changes and things that are in the pipeline. And there's one guy in particular named Hardin, that he's going to have a little quote for us. Nathan Hardin says, in 50 years, if not much sooner, half of the roughly 4,500 colleges and universities now operating in the United States will have ceased to exist. The technology driving this change is already at work, and nothing can stop it. The future looks like this. Access to college-level education will be free for everyone. The residential college campus will be largely obsolete. Tens of thousands of professors will lose their jobs. The bachelor's degree will become increasingly irrelevant. And 10 years from now, Harvard will enroll 10 million students. Thank you, New Yorkers, get this joke. Thus spake Nathan Hardin. And there's some reasons why he says this. There's lots of factors driving the changes behind education. So let's look at some of these factors that are going on with this. First of all, one of the things driving this is the MOOC, the massive online open course. Now, this is enabled by the internet, that thing that we take for granted. It allows us to bring in lots of information from weather reports to political commentary, just lots of factors along those lines. It's affecting lots of things. And there's lots of corporations out there ready to take advantage of this. So let's talk about a couple of those. Coursera, Udacity, and edX are some of these companies. Now, what these companies do, basically, they reduce colleges and universities, or more specifically, professors, to be basically content providers, right? And then what Coursera does is it basically says, okay, we'll provide a platform to deliver this material for you. You don't need to have a classroom. We don't need a campus. We actually don't need to permanently employ faculty. We'll just rent their course material. And then that'll facilitate lots of things. Universities, some universities, big universities like Harvard and Stanford and places like this idea because it means that they can get rid of some of their infrastructure. And if they can enroll 50,000 students and a certain percentage of them actually pay for the courses to get credit, then they're likely to make a profit, even though Coursera is likely to earn around 92% of the profits on that. But there are extensions of this too, and tonight is an example of that, because TEDx is an extension of this idea of the MOOC. It's this idea of taking information, an educational experience of some sort, and offering it to a larger audience for free. Although you paid $1 to get in here, I'm sorry about that. But it allows you to get access to free information. Now there's lots of advantages to this. You've already had experience with this. Some of the roots in this lie behind things like PBS. If you watch Nova, you've seen an early example of what a MOOC might be. Early radio stations often went into this idea that's why a number of universities have radio stations associated with them, so that they could educate the public via the radio. So this is an idea that's been with us for a while. So let's just look at some more things here too. Is this the end of it? Let's talk about Hardin's vision of the future. First of all, he thinks that access to college education should be free to everyone. It's a great idea. We all hey, I can get stuff for free. It's like Pandora, right? Or Spotify. Hey, I can get this stuff for free. I don't have to pay for music. I don't have to pay musicians or songwriters. It's great, unless you're a musician or a songwriter, and then it becomes a problem. So there are, the question gets to be, who pays for it? The next one, the residential college campus will become largely obsolete. That's a question we're going to talk about in a little bit of detail coming up here. Tens of thousands of professors will lose their jobs. Some folks would be really happy about that. Tens of thousands of us would be very unhappy about that. But you know, you get the idea of somebody with a very financial set of minds about education might say, well, that's a good thing. We could save some money. The bachelor's degree will become increasingly irrelevant. Well, maybe for some things, yes. Former Mayor Michael Bloomberg recently said that he thought that a lot of folks who go to four-year colleges should just get a trade, become a plumber. They'd make more money and contribute to society better. But we'll have some questions about what the value of doing a four-year degree might be. And in 10 years from now, Harvard will enroll 10 million students. Really? I don't know about that. So let's question some of these things. Hardin's vision has some things behind it to make us think about it. First of all, a college education, most of you in this room know, is very, very expensive. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One has to do with the fact that you're paying people like me to teach, or that you've got a great hall like this to attend lectures and concerts in. It's one of the costs, that's part of the costs of running an education. So there are benefits to that, but there are consequences too. What would an uneducated society be like? A society where you don't have folks, a lot of folks with undereducated who don't have college degrees. And what are the benefits of an educated society? Lots of countries in the world recognize that an educated society is a society that's going to generate jobs and be stable and provide lots of good for the world. And indeed, lots of other countries are moving towards the idea, have moved towards the idea of providing very cheap or free education. Germany recently, you may have seen, moving towards this idea of providing free higher education for students. And lots of countries support this. United States, not so much. We've been on for a long time, very much a kind of this trend towards increasingly making students pay for more and more of the education. It's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. The other thing here is, could 4 years of college be better served in a workplace? That's what some folks think. Would learning a trade or vocation be a better use of a student's time? Maybe some students, yes. Other students, I'm not so sure. I think there are lots of benefits to being at Hogwarts and take on the responsibilities of being in that context. And another thing, is a workplace the best place to learn ethics and tolerance? A good question, I think. You know, is a workplace, some places yes, other places perhaps not. And finally here, is the undergraduate degree worthless? Well, some other questions we might need. Does one actually need a diploma to know things? Probably not. But there's other things here too. Is the degree the goal, or is it one of the rewards? And finally, what does a degree actually represent? Now, there's lots of history and background on the way that education works. Let's talk about some of the background here for a bit. So let's look at the past. Where does education come from? Well, let's look at Aristotle. This is an Arabic example, illustration of Aristotle teaching his students about astronomy. It's good to remember sometimes that much of what we know about the ancient Greeks comes through the Arabic cultures. They preserved the material through the 1st century CE, and we got it sometime in the 15th century. But notice the setup here. The teacher, the students. The teacher explaining, gesturing with his finger, the students consulting the text that he's provided them with to consult the idea. So that's one example of this. Let's look at another. Roman education, of course, the same model here. The teacher in the middle, the students, the teacher, you can see again, in this case, the teacher gesticulating with his hand to illustrate and to teach. The students consulting the texts. Another one. Yes, Mughal India. Showing us, again, a teacher in the middle, the students paying obeisance to him, listening, studying texts, and listening to him. This is all part of this pattern, this idea of the socialization of education, because education is more than just learning things like astronomy. It's about learning how to interact with other people and learning in a social environment. And finally, let's go through a series of this on European education. University of Bologna, arguably the oldest university in Europe. Founded in the 1100s, I believe. This is from 1497. These are some German students. Again, the teacher, the text, the students. Let's look at another couple of pictures of Bologna. A classic picture here. This is Bologna circa 1350, scene of the class. We can see a couple of things going here. We can see the example of the teacher in the pulpit as such, reading from text, the class reading its material, looking at detail, having conversations with themselves. And of course, there's always the student who's been studying all night. and is now deep, deep in thought about what the teacher is saying. This is what teachers live for. All right, so let's look at something else here too. What is the vision of the future? Well, the future has had lots of visions in the past. Let's look at another one here. So this is around 1900 in France. This is their version of what they think the future of education is going to be like in the year 2000. Now the teacher here is reduced to basically piling books into a hopper. A diligent assistant is grinding them out. It's somehow being transferred to passive students sitting very patiently, but socially, kind of, except not interacting. This is a bit like Neo in the Matrix, right? He's just sitting there receiving the information. But this is what they thought in 1900 that the future would look like. But they also, and we can laugh at this to a certain extent and say that's pretty strange, but hey, maybe they're listening, I don't know. Let's look at another example, though, here, too. This is from the same series. This is actually a series of prints that was created for a series of cigar boxes. Isaac Asimov used these for a book that he put together a number of years ago. But here from 1900, here's another version. And notice that this is the first time we actually have a female student in the picture. And somehow the technology now has allowed education even to reach women. Who knew? Right? But this is not so unfamiliar to us, is it? Basically, you've got a projection on the wall. This is like a lot of our classrooms. We can look at a more recent example here. In fact, we can use projections on the wall. We can even use this 19th century equipment called a piano to convey information, but it's still very much a social environment. So we're still working with a classroom. You can flip it, John. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's that social engagement. It's why, for example, the teachers and I who are here, I can see teachers sitting in the audience out here. This is one of the reasons we teach, is the social environment. It's the social interaction, that compact that we make with students, that relationship that starts in those 4 years that we invest here at college. So let's look at some more here. So life before graduation, that's your 4 years at Skidmore. Let's look at a couple of things here. Again, students and faculty work together for 4 years, basically of undergraduate study. This is a way where we develop the abilities, that relationship, your thirst for knowledge. We share that. This is one of the great things I tell parents when they come and bring students to camp, is that one of the great rewards for me as a teacher is I watch these students come in as adolescents and leave as adults. And that critical point in time of working with a student to help them develop their abilities, to watching them graduate as an adult 4 years, is one of the most rewarding parts of my job. It's a great part of it. There is also this engagement that sits at the heart of education. This is this social engagement, this compact, this social contract between the professor and the student is at the core of what we do. So the question gets to be, how do we take this into the future? Why attend? Well, first of all, there is this transformative experience of the campus. When corporations build their headquarters, they don't build factories, they build campuses. Microsoft builds a campus, right? Google builds a campus. They're trying to emulate what goes on in an educational institution like our own here. There is also this idea of the internalizing of intellectual tools. These are meant to provide us with the tools for a life of change. Think of your education as like a Swiss Army knife, right? It's got lots of different components to it. It's there to help you anticipate and prepare for all the different things that are going to hit you in life. That's part of what that residential experience is. And if you're living here and working here, developing those disciplined habits of the mind necessitates rigorous intellectual training. And that happens in the context of a college where you basically live and work with students over a period of time. And then finally, there is this idea of the inauguration into a life of intellectual engagement and civic responsibility. And in this regard, I cheer for those folks, those students and those faculty who walked down Broadway the other day into the downtown area and recognizing that they're in solidarity with the residents of Ferguson, Missouri. All the cheers they got and all the boos and hisses they got as they proceeded into town. That's part of that civic engagement, that responsibility of an intellectual. I mentioned Hogwarts as earlier kind of as a joke. But think about it, investiture into that society has its responsibilities, and that's part of what goes on here. So, what is life after graduation like? Well, let's talk about that. First of all, what is the college's role in your life after graduation? Is it limited to being a portal to something else? Does this come along, hey, congratulations, you've graduated, bye-bye? Or is that education really a foundation upon which individuals will build lives? And actually, I just one of those little asides, got a great email from a student today who left Skidmore in 1992, and he's coming back to finish up. And this is an example. I like this idea. Where the student is never left. They still have this connection to the campus. They want to come back and they want to complete. So this is a foundation that we can build upon. All right, let's look at something else here. Creative thought matters. We keep hearing this idea, but this idea of engagement with the student is fundamentally important. Let's look at some here. First of all, I think what we should do is transform alumni affairs into something else. We should have it take a more active role in the continuing intellectual development of students. Now, when I say creative thought matters in some fundamental ways. Creative thought is not for sissies. You got to take risks. You want to be creative, you can't do it on the cheap. You got to be ready to take some risks. Things like converting alumni affairs to saying, okay, let's have you take a more active role in the life of students after they graduate. Let's do it. Broaden the directive of services such as the Moore Documentary Studies Collaborative to support faculty initiatives for online learning. That technology that Hardin proposed as a way to, that was going to destroy universities, we need to use that technology to expand what we can do. And then finally, empower instructional technologies, those folks over in the library, to help us create different versions of our classes. And I've got some examples for you. In fact, I tried this as an experiment myself. So, oh yeah, forgot one. Let's use this available technology not only to enhance our teaching, but to make it available to a broader audience. And by broader audience, I would include not just alumni, but also parents and current students. All right, let's take a look here. Here's what I did a couple of years ago. I worked on this course. I decided I wanted to take a course that I was already teaching, the Beatles, an introduction, and convert it. I wanted to take it and see what it would be like to make this into an online course. Now, there have been lots of online courses over time, but I wanted to do something here different. I wanted to take, first of all, the example of a TED Talk. TED Talks are supposed to be 8 to 10 or 12 minutes long. I can't tell, the timer's run out here. But anyways, try to break it down. I took this, I said 26 classes, break it into 190 plus docu-lectures or video pods, each of them 6 to 12 minutes long. That's one way to do it. I'm going to create 12 supporting quizzes to reinforce that knowledge. These are not quizzes to say, test you're in and out. This is to reinforce your knowledge. And then finally, I love being able to interact with students online. And students, by students here, I mean alumni and parents, asking me questions about, in the recording of Got to Get You Into My Life, how many microphones did they use? How many overtakes did they do? How did they do that? And then the other thing here is we make this available also to residential students for class review, so the students in my class could take it as well. All right, let's look at some other things here too. So we've got engagement. I keep coming back to this idea, this engagement between faculty and students, that sacred trust. I think we should need to make these docu-lectures or video podcasts available online to all alumni. We need to extend our educational engagement to alumni at no extra cost. They've already paid for it. Why charge them again? Build connections between alumni and current students. There's no reason why we should be separating these folks once you leave, that you totally leave the students on campus, right? Build that relationship, not only for career development, but also so that you can share, continue to share in that learning experience. All right, so the campus is not a weakness, it's a strength. The shared classroom experience lies at the social core of learning. All right, now, back to Hardin here. He says in 50 years, if not much sooner, half of the roughly 4,500 colleges and universities now operating in the United States will have ceased to exist. What do you think? Thank you.